Q&A. So first off, I'd like to welcome Dr. Mau Amis, and he's the founder and executive director of the African Center for a Green Economy, which he set up back in 2012. And it's a non-profit think tank and capacity building organization that's based here in South Africa. And Dr. Amis will be joined by Gaylor Montmasson-Clair, who is a senior economist at Trade and Industrial Policy Strategies, known as TIPS. And he leads TIPS's work on sustainability and the just transition. And then they're also joined by Maluta Netshaulu. Maluta is the Green Economy Portfolio Lead at Nedbank's CSI. As you can see, we've got 4 seats. So our fourth panelist is Hleziphi, who is the managing director of a projects and technology services company, KP Cares, which is a Nedbank supported partner. So we'll also get to hear how this relationship has been developing over time. So let's please welcome them to the stage with a round of applause. And that's our second panel for today. And please feel free to also use the virtual platform to raise your issues, raise comments, as well as questions. I've got my eye on that particular chat box, so you can be assured that your question just might come up. Hello, everybody. Yes, good to have this panel as we drill down into some of the issues. And now let me start with you. Tell us more about your organization, African Center for a Green Economy. What is it exactly that you do, and what are the opportunities that exist in the local economy?
Thank you, Azani, and thanks everyone for being here. It's a really good opportunity to ask me about what we do at the African Center for Green Economy. It's quite poignant because Monet, who just gave a speech earlier on, was my professor at UCT many years ago. And Monet gave me my first job at WWF to run the water stewardship program. Yeah. And Monet always told us that, you know, don't be afraid to lead. Because ultimately, it's those of us on this continent, the young people, who actually have the opportunity to bring the change that is required. So that is precisely what led to the founding of the African Center for Green Economy. Unfortunately, I had to quit Monet's WWF. And the center happened by pure accident. Myself and my co-founder, who is actually here, Dr. Sepo Hachigonta, we were doing our PhDs at UCT on the same scholarship. We were next door to each other, but we didn't know each other. We met, guess where? In Beijing, China, on a student conference. Yeah. And you know, as black people, when you find yourself in a sea of white people, you kind of navigate towards each other naturally, right? Yeah. And Sepo is originally from Zambia, I'm originally from Uganda. Hey, where are you? I'm at UCT, doing similar stuff. And we made a point that it does not have to be the Americans to bring us together as young people, as Africans, to bring about the change that we need. Yes. So it was at that point when we decided we were going to actually set up the African Center for Green Economy. And so while I was working at WWF, already this idea was cooking in my mind. How do we set up the center and so on? And in 2012, for those who know, the Rio de Janeiro Plus 20 conference, which was basically 20 years since the global leaders started meeting around sustainable development goals, at that point, really the time was, how do we take these conversations that had been going on for 20 years into real action? And that really gave birth to the African Center for Green Economy. At that time, I just rolled my sleeves and said, let's do this. And this has been 11 years, supporting entrepreneurs in South Africa, across the continent, and so on. We see ourselves as a think-do tank, not a think tank. And I sometimes call myself as a recovering academic, because I think that the time for action is now. You know, I often say we come from these communities. We have gone to school bare feet. We have stayed hungry. We understand what need is required on the ground, and we are best placed to bring about that change. And so one of the key things we do in South Africa, we're based in Cape Town, is how do we connect South African entrepreneurs to the rest of the continent? Right. Because we see that's where a lot of the opportunities are. We see that that's really where the change needs to happen, both here and in the rest of the continent. And quickly, in terms of opportunities, for me, I see there are two key opportunities for the transition in the green economy. One is that we have a youth dividend. You know, young people, energetic people who are unfortunately not provided with the opportunities they require. So a lot of the institutions that really build capacity of young people play an extremely important role in driving the change that's required. So our youth dividend on the continent is very important. And we can talk about the resources, because Monet earlier on talked about the transition that needs to happen. I mean, this is a mineral-rich country and continent. A lot of the resources that will be required to bring about sustainability, whether it's electrical vehicles and so on the continent, a lot of the opportunities are here in terms of developing those local value chains that will allow us to transition. And so we see Africa as the really leader in some of these issues, and we really need to take the opportunity that we have at our hands to bring about the change that is required.
Yes. Well, we'll hear from an entrepreneurial company in this space, and I'd love to hear what conversation comes up between the two of you, along with Nedbank, of course. Gaylor, let me come to you. What has South Africa been doing from a policy perspective? Because as I listen to Mao speak, and it's about what entrepreneurs are doing, but we know that policy matters to enable these sorts of ideas.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you know, it matters a lot, and again, I mean, thanks again for the platform. I think it's really important to put the spotlight on that. You know, we often ask, you know, are we doing enough? You know, and generally, you know, I'm an economist. If you ask any economist a question, the answer is always, it depends. But in that case, I think we're pretty clear. We're not doing enough. You know. And I think Monet already highlighted that in terms of a lot of the work that's being done. I think we have to really put the emphasis on the message that, again, Monet shared, that there's only one economy. There's only one society.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think, in a way, we packaged, you know, the green economy as a sector, probably to get a foot in the door at first. And I think that has slowly but surely backfired, you know, in terms of how we see the transition. Because we really need to transition the entire economy. And we've seen that in the policy space. You know. All the support that is coming from government in support of the green economy is piecemeal, drips and drabs. You know. Bit of renewable energy here, bit of water and sanitation support there, a bit of waste management and circularity, but no systemic transformation.
And probably also contradictory actions and policies.
Very much so. You know, we still have a gigantic amount of support going to fossil fuels. You know, just to give you an idea in terms of, you know, the support that's going to in terms of subsidies to fossil fuel in the economy in South Africa, direct support. About 2% of our economy, GDP. And if you start accounting for the externalities, you know, the air pollution, the early death, the environmental damage, you go to a whopping 14% of the economy, actually, you know, in terms of fossil fuel subsidies. So that's all money, funding, direct and indirect, that could be really channeled towards supporting a green economy and all the sectors and all the opportunities that we already highlighted. So we really need to see that shift. Of course, at the end of the day, it also comes down to driving particular opportunities in particular sectors. There's two particular policy developments that I think are really critical at the moment. One is our developments around renewable energy, of course. More broadly, I would say kind of new energy technologies, coupled with energy efficiency. And this is gaining a lot of momentum. You know. But how are we using it to build our economy is the key question. You know. We've all seen the ramp up in demand for renewable energy now, and the private sector has been really excited. You know, the policy framework has been unlocked since December of last year. We are seeing gigantic amounts of investment in renewable energy.
Yeah, I mean, just this morning we're hearing about shortages of installers and electricians and so on.
And if you look, you know, we don't have enough skills, but if you also look at the imports, this is all imported. You know. Just to give you an idea, I mean, just in the last 3 months, you know, It's $200 million of solar panels imported into South Africa.
Wow.
Okay? It's a huge amount of money. Yeah. Over the last 10 years, as a country, we have imported 35 billion rands worth of solar panels into the country. 35 billion rands. Yeah. Do we have an economy to show for it? An industry to show for it? We have little. We have some green shoots, but we have little. We could do a lot more. And that's really about driving, that systemic shift in renewable energy and in many other industries. So I think in the discussion we can go into some detail. Absolutely. But I think in terms of the overview, I think we need to start moving from trying to develop sectors and drips and drabs. And of course those policies are important, but to put them in a much more comprehensive systemic change in terms of our finance system, our policy systems, all our instruments. Just briefly, if we look at all the policy instruments that a government has, I would say almost all of them have been used to some extent to support the green economy. But if they only use it to support to the extent of 1, 2, maybe 5%, then that means that there's still 95% of the potential that's not being harnessed. So we know that we can use those tools to promote the green economy, but we're not doing it to the extent that we need. Yeah. So we need to ramp up, shift gears, and really drive that systemic transformation going forward.
Yeah, that'll go a long way in supporting entrepreneurs and growing more jobs out of this sector. So, Maluta, help us understand the role that Nedbank is playing in this space. I mean, what Gaylor has just outlined, of course, is the shortcomings. And as business, there's always an opportunity to, stand in the gap. And Nedbank has been doing that with its own initiatives. How have you been growing entrepreneurship in the green economy?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, as a bank, its core business, it's about lending, investments, enabling transactions, as well as adding value to the businesses, our clients.
Yeah.
How we sort of are helping our clients to transition into the green economy is by, tailoring and developing innovative solutions. Because it doesn't help to create new enterprises if you've got your existing ones that are tried and tested and operating failing. So there's a lot of work that we're doing and a lot of propositions and solutions that we're sort of targeting towards existing companies, our client base, for them to be resilient against the climate and resilient against the inefficiencies in the country like load shedding, etc. So that's what we are doing. And that also then goes on to save jobs and a lot of socio-economic issues in the country. When it comes to entrepreneurs, I think through CSI, because we see ourselves as a center of excellence and innovation, because there are things that in business they don't think about, like the 64% of entrepreneurs in the township economy that cease operations altogether because of load shedding. That's quite shocking. And, and then it speaks to in terms of us knowing what's happening first, and then we put solutions in place so that we're then able to assist. So where we sit at CSI or in the foundation, we don't see ourselves as just operating in isolation. We're seeking to solve societal issues. If we're talking the 5 million people in South Africa that don't have access to clean drinking water, even in my home, I don't drink that water, to be honest, because I have to boil it first before I drink it. But there's others that don't even have a tap to open, to access that water. So we're doing a lot of work by first understanding in terms of what are the issues, and then say how do we solve them. And then we then put on the resources in place. And we're also taking this at a group level so that we then are able to solve as an enterprise to these issues.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from one of the partners that you've been working with, and that is KP Cares. It's a Nedbank-supported initiative. Khabiso, tell us more about this journey that you've traveled and some of the work that you do.
So I'm an engineer by profession, right? And I'm a project manager, so I've been in the industry for some time. Very colorful background there because there's nuclear in it, waste to energy. But with the current program that we have in partnership with the Nedbank Foundation, what we saw as an entity, as KP Cares, was I'm in the industry. Renewable energy is here, right? That's the truth of the matter. We are suffering from load shedding. There's been 6 rounds of the REIPPP already. And with those rounds, you get to see that there's a skill gap, right? There's a skill gap, and like he mentioned, we import skills because we don't have enough skills here. And we saw that as an opportunity to say, there's high employment in the country already, let's bridge the gap. Let's try and just reduce the numbers and create the skills here locally so that when international companies come in for the REIPPP rounds, because let's be honest, it's international companies mainly that are driving these rounds. We, as the people of the country, can then enforce that these companies use local skills. We train them such that they are able to participate, and we need to hold these international entities that we bring into the country accountable for further skills transfer. They are the ones with the knowledge, and hence we are importing them and we're spending millions of rands on them. Let's make sure that when they leave the country, there's been enough skills transfer.
What success have you seen, and what have some of the challenges been?
With our candidates, as Puvi mentioned, we are currently in the process of training 100 candidates, and we target grassroots communities because, one, they do not have the access. They are there, they are willing, and we want to make sure that we alleviate poverty, we alleviate unemployment, right? So we train these candidates, and our program is created and planned in such a way that after having done the training, there's gonna be a 12-month internship. So we place these candidates in internship. And the reason why we do that is because when you start looking for employment, today if you go and submit your CV or you apply for a post, you are required to have experience. And we want to make sure that, and it's a technical field, you don't just want to train and leave the candidates hanging. And it's a new, I'm going to call it new, though it's old, it's more than 15 years old. It's a new industry. People are starting to warm up to it. So you want to make sure that these candidates, as we place them, they are well trained, they are well experienced. And also another reason why we in short and insist on having the 12 months internship is because and whatnot. We, together with the Nedbank Foundation, want this program to be sustainable. And how do we then track this sustainability? Is ensuring that these candidates have the practicals as well, the work experience, because we don't only train them on the technical skills of solar implementation, PV mounting, energy efficiency. We also incorporate work readiness skills, soft skills, because some of these candidates have never worked before. So that's how we have packaged the program and we have created the program, and are ensuring that at the end of the day, there's sustainability and we are able to see a difference, not only to the candidates, but to the communities as well, because there's also SMMEs that get developed so that they can create the economy in their communities. Dr. Monet mentioned a whole host of opportunities that are there, and these opportunities are not only in suburban areas, they are greatly in rural areas, and that's our goal, to see these developments happening in rural areas. We don't want to take the people from grassroots communities and come flat Gauteng. You know, we want the economy to go back and for them to be able to sustain themselves and create these opportunities for themselves.
Mao, that raises some interesting questions about the opportunities that are there, and you work with entrepreneurs. What can you tell us about a little bit more about where these opportunities are to be found? Which areas?
Thanks, Azania. I'll rephrase your question and ask myself my own question. No, I'm joking.
Okay, but, ask yourself. I want to hear it.
No, first I want to echo what she just said. You know, a few years ago, we did work with entrepreneurs in Katu and Priska. And it's so heartbreaking to go to a place like Priska, where the Orange River is just flowing literally a couple of few meters away, and people queue at a feeding center from 10 because the meal is going to be served at 1. Completely disempowered. Yet there's all these opportunities for actors like her to come on the ground, teach people really the basics of how to take advantage of the opportunities around them, you know, to address issues around food insecurity and all those kind of ills that society faces. It really breaks my heart when you go to the Northern Cape, where you find this massive grid, you know, taking the electricity to the big cities, and these communities have never ever had an experience of, you know, electricity in their own households. You know, in Katu we worked with, in Kuruman we worked with entrepreneurs, and we asked the question like, what would it take to catalyze a local economy? Every single entrepreneur we talked to wanted to become, I wanted to start a transport company, wanted to go into catering business, because they are seeing the mine as a place where they can become suppliers. Yet, for those who know the Northern Cape, Kuruman is basically on the highway to Namibia. All these tourists are driving past. No one is making a stop because there's nothing to stop there for, you know? So we supported an entrepreneur there, Workshop Kokasi, and she set up this amazing space in Kuruman. And twice in a year, she won the Female Tourism Lady of the Year because of that, you know, in those local communities. So really, for me, I think that the opportunities exist there on the ground, and they're in sectors that oftentimes are not just, you know, the traditional established sectors.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that the key issue that we need to address is, and a lot has already been highlighted by Gaylor and Monet, is that for the green economy, it's a systems change that is required. And when I said I wanted to ask my own question, is that a few days ago, for those who know, the World Bank said they had these spring meetings. And one of the key things the World Bank is going through is a process of rethinking the global financial architecture in a sense. Because what we're finding as an intermediary institution is that a lot of these financial resources are sitting at a high level, they're not trickling down on the ground. So all the financial institutions need to rethink who are they financing, what kind of financing mechanisms are being put out there to ensure that it actually works for where the need is required the most.
Right. I want to now turn to the room, turn to the floor. As I did say, that we'll split this between the conversation on the stage and, of course, your questions. Any hands? Our ushers are ready if you have questions to ask our panelists. Or can I continue? Okay, so please, our ushers are at the back. Please indicate that they are. If you have a question as you go along, we will then divert back to the floor. Okay, you can take the question. There's someone right at the back. Hello.
Hi, my name is Ajit. I'm from Odin Education. One of the things that worries me a lot is that Africa has two problems. We need huge economic growth, given the fact that we have this huge young dividend that we all are quite excited about. And at the same time, you know, our carbon footprint per capita is 0.7 compared to 0.7 tons per year, compared to 14 from the US and 7 from Europe. Yeah? So I really think we need a very different approach to solving our green movement going forward, because it has to come with economic growth. What is the panel's thoughts on what I'm saying?
Right. Gaylor, you had touched on that, that it has to translate. It has to translate into economic growth.
I'd say it has to translate in economic development. You know? I think the concept of growth is a difficult one, but you know, what
does that mean?
Well, I think we often see growth as the target in itself. You know, like we need to create economic growth, and that's what's going to drive our economy. And then we lose sight of the actual target, which is, you know, well-being, economic development, employment, and effectively, you know, what you need to see going forward is an increasing decoupling between the two. You know, we need to decouple our resource use and our externalities to achieve not even the same level of well-being, much higher levels of well-being, because of course only few on the planet live well. You know, and so for me it's about how do we widen, you know, the benefits of what we're doing, and certainly, you know, again, if we go to, you know, renewable energy, yes, it's booming globally, it's booming in the country right now as we speak, but it's booming of, if we're being generous, 10% of the population, and I think that's being very generous already. You know, most are left behind. You know. And have been left behind for a very long time. Yeah. You know, and again, when we're building the industry, you know, are we bringing new emerging suppliers into the mix, new entrants? Are we, you know, making sure that we're producing locally, not necessarily everything, but what makes sense, you know? So for me, it's about, you know, how we build those value chains, you know, and certainly in renewable energy, we've also done a lot of work in water and sanitation, for instance, and how do we bring those new technologies to people, you know, to everyone. We know the water challenges that we have, so how do we bring things like next generation sanitation that doesn't rely on water, you know, for everyone, and that we make it fit for purpose, and again, that we build it, you know, domestically. So there's policy processes around that currently in development, a number of master plans being developed, and I think, you know, it's really important for everyone to get involved in those processes, to bring inputs. I mean, I facilitate the renewable energy master plan process, and we currently trying to finalize that process. The goal of that plan and that process is to drive industrial and inclusive development of renewable energy in the country. Yeah. We've done a lot of work previously with colleagues on water and sanitation as well to do the same thing. You know, do we build industrial and inclusive rollout and development of water and sanitation technologies in the countries? So there are some developments, and I know when I mention plan, master plan, policy, people are like, oh, another plan, oh, and we never need nothing about it. Yeah. I know there are risks. You know, sometimes plans are not always implemented, or they're not implemented the way they should be. But it has to start somewhere, you know, we're really pushing for some change.
But what I'm also hearing you say is that the sustainability, if we're pursuing sustainability, it requires a different set of thinking and approach. And then it means that development is more important. It's
different. And you know, if you even go back to, now you're like using my memory. I think it's 2013, the National Strategy for Sustainable Development. I might get the date slightly wrong, but from, at the time, the Department of Environmental Affairs in South Africa, it even tells you, you know, GDP is not a measure of well-being. It doesn't help you to look at GDP. You know, it's, in fairness, was never developed for that. You know, GDP was developed to actually assess the losses of the American economy in 1929. That was what it was actually developed for. Right. So it's never meant to assess well-being. So we need different metrics. We need to look at things differently. You know, what are we pursuing? Is it, you know, access to energy, to water, you know, good health, good education, or is it just simply GDP, growing metrics, you know, growing financial transactions? Yeah. Well, I think we've got that wrong. You know, we need to start looking at it differently. So, you know, if we do that at a systemic level, you know, we start measuring things differently, start assessing things differently, then what matters changes. What matters is not 1 more percentage point of GDP. It's, oh, what are we achieving in terms of energy, water, waste, education, well-being. And that can enable you to change decisions in government and also in the private sector, of course.
Right. But now I want to know about investors. If this is what we're saying then, right, then from an investment perspective, what are you seeing? Is there an interest to invest in this, in this kind of approach? We know Nedbank is doing it, but are you seeing enough of an interest?
So a few years ago, actually, right at the peak when Cape Town was experiencing its water crisis, we did work for the Water Research Commission, and we wrote a book, it's actually available online, called the South Africa Water Innovation Story. And what we found out of that innovation, out of that research work, was that ultimately there is no shortage of solutions. Neither is there any shortage of money, basically. It's just that these solutions and money are not meeting each other. The ecosystem is completely so broken. You know, if you go to universities, you'll find amazing kids doing epic, developing epic solutions, but those solutions are not finding themselves for markets. Right. You know, the actors who are actually supporting the research community are not talking to potential investors. And then investors, particularly during the Cape Town water crisis, everyone is saying, like, how can we, you know, improve our water portfolio? How can we improve? They want to put money in water solutions, but there are no solutions. And so there is a real gap in the space around the innovation ecosystem of actors who hold this space together, bringing the universities together, bringing the financial institutions together, and other ecosystem actors, so that innovations can move seamlessly from R&D all the way to commercialization. So for me, I see that that's where, I mean, the shift is. But really, I mean, the last 2, 3, 4 years, there's been a lot of traction in terms of the green economy, investors thinking about some of these space. So I see that there's a lot of opportunities coming through, but we also on the ground have to be prepared for those opportunities to land. One of the work that we're doing at the moment in relation to, obviously, to just energy transition is at the local level. Do the South African local government have the systems in place to push the just energy transition? Because a lot of the conversation is happening at a local, higher level. But if you go to speak to a municipal manager, they're completely, you know, disconnected from this discourse. Or if they are, it's in 1 or 2 municipalities. But this needs to be across the country, so that when these opportunities come and they flow, they really can get seamlessly faster to where change needs to happen.
Right. Maluta, let me hear from you about the lessons that Nedbank has learned, because it also speaks to this trial and error, shifts and perspective changes along the way. What lessons have you learned?
Yeah, first you need to know what you're doing.
We hope so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you laugh, but I think it's quite important to understand what you're doing, what is your intent, you know, what are you seeking to solve, you know, and you need to, you know, to have the right team. So our team is quite dynamic, you know. I might not be showing it now because I'm on stage and the lights, you know. But outside of here, I'm quite vibrant. You know, yeah. But yeah, but so we sort of have a good team that knows what to do from a portfolio management perspective to governance to M&E. We don't have a function, you know, like Vodacom, but we do have people that are responsible for that. So we're able to track and measure and evaluate our impact. We also spend a lot of time, you know, choosing the right partners, like KP Cares, for example, in the energy space. We've got partners in water, Kusini Water. We've got incubators, Indalo Inclusive, and Black Umbrella, which is in partnership with CSIR. We've got Fetula, you know. Those are guys that are really credible, doing quite good work, that are really, you know, they've been doing for quite some time in terms of entrepreneur development, skills development, and then those ones that come through shining, then we then give them an opportunity to start their businesses where Nedbank funds those guys. You know, and then we don't even leave it there, because from an impact perspective, you cannot just fund and then walk away, you know. You need to be able to say that, what has the funding resulted into? If you've created 10 enterprises, those enterprises, are they thriving in terms of revenue, in terms of scale? How many jobs have they created? How many skills? How many people have they empowered? You know, so that's what we, you know, we're really passionate about. So we don't take this job quite lightly.
Yeah, clearly you have a clear metrics then on what you're measuring and what
Yeah.
you're looking for as a marker for success. Let's go back to the questions in the room. I've got two in a moment. Let's start here.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Philip Macheke from Water Research Commission.
Hi, Philip.
I wanted to maybe get a comments from maybe also Dr. Mon, if possible, and also the panel to say, as I'm sitting here, maybe I'm a corporate, and then actually I want to contribute to green economy. Will this be, let's say, maybe he mentioned the opportunities in various sectors like water sector, transport, all that. So and especially also you mentioned off-grid solutions, which I mean is a very good one for the time being now with the situation in the country. So as a corporate and I'm here, will it be an interesting thing, or will I be contributing in terms of green economy if, let's say, I, as part of my CSI budgets, go and implement solutions that are something like off-grid in communities and various others? It was mentioned that actually even in the rural areas, that's where even some of the solutions are required, which are, like Gaylor just talked to, next generation sanitation, which is waterless, meaning that even in rural areas, such can be deployed or implemented. So will that be a contributor to green economy in that way? And also I want to check that for every maybe sector, water, transport and all that, will there be, or is there somewhere where I can check to say, okay, this fits the criteria for a green tech or a green solution, so that as I'm implementing, I'm mindful of the technology or the solution, the type of solution that I'm using, that it's already not disturbing what nature is already, what you were saying about nature earlier on and the biodiversity. Is there something like that which someone can use as a tick box before they go ahead in terms of projects maybe going forward, so that they don't further disturb the natural services that has been disturbed to this extent so far? Thank you.
Thank you. Really great questions there. Who wants to take the first one? Okay, yes. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I can take, because you say you're from Water Research Commission, and the Water Research Commission funded my master's and PhD, so that feels like home. So thank you. I think that the Water Research Commission plays a really important role in terms of driving the knowledge generation that is required to bring about the transition. And what I really never talked about, which I want to highlight in terms of the systems, and I explicitly said here, this challenge we face is what we call a wicked problem. There is no one tick box that you can tick and then, bingo, you have arrived at a solution. It's a systems-wide problem that requires systems thinking and how all of these things connect to each other. And one of these important way to think about some of these issues is around how we use value chain innovations. Because really, our problem is that if you look at, let's say, the food value chain, from where food is produced to where the waste is disposed, is completely inefficient. So we need to look at innovations both right on the farm, how this food gets transported to the market, how it's stored, how it's packaged, how it's consumed, how that waste gets disposed, and so on. So there's no one all solution. I mean, you as an individual, we can do the things within our means to identify those solutions that have got minimum footprint on the environment, but ultimately there's no box that you can tick and then you say, arrive at a solution.
Right. But what about the question on assessing if a project is responsible, is green? As you were saying, is there a way of knowing whether what they're funding is contributing positively and not causing harm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have to go into the details, but there are different mechanisms that one could actually use to assess whether it's a product or whether it's a process. Because ultimately, what we want to reduce, we want to make sure that whatever product you are actually building does not, for example, emit CO2 into the atmosphere, or does not result, let's say, if in agriculture, in biodiversity loss, and so on. But there are systems that you, as a business, as an enterprise, can put in place to kind of make sure that you are kind of towing the line, so to speak.
Okay, right. Are you satisfied? Thank you. There's a question as well on this side of the room.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, it is lunchtime. My name is Pamandla from the South African Sugar Association. I'm interested in Hleziphi, in the program that she is driving, youth placements in the engineering space. Very interesting. We have a sugar industry trust fund for education where we fund bursaries in the engineering space, and we're finding more and more electrical engineering graduates that are not finding placements. So I'm interested to find out about this interesting challenge that you're working in about the IPP approved renewable energy opportunities and how they are subcontracting and using local labor in their communities. How are those discussions going in government? I know they're quite advanced in the sector, in the building sector, because that sector is sort of evolved, but I'm not sure about this energy space sector. How are those discussions? Because we really do need opportunities there for engineering graduates. So I'm interested in those discussions with the Department of Energy, if you've got any insights there. Thanks.
Kgabiso?
Thank you for that question. And I'm not going to speak on the Department of Energy part of it. I'm going to speak to our experience. Me and my partner, Hleziphi, we have been in the industry for more than 10 years, right? So over the years, we've worked with IPPs. We are currently still working with IPPs. So what has worked for us in terms of finding placement and having discussions about the intake of our cohorts has been from the relationships that we've built over the years, and we continue to build, that we engage with the different partners in terms of this is the program that we have, these are the candidates that we are upskilling, and these are the skills that they have. And yes, it is accredited training, so it's easy for the IPPs to take them in because it's accredited training. So what has worked for us to date is that we have been privileged to have relationships with IPPs and companies that are currently participating in the renewable energy space. We still need more. I'm opening the room to say we need more partners in the energy space. We've got a lot of candidates that we still have to train. So do reach out to us. We can never have enough partners when it comes to taking in these candidates and ensuring that they have the skills and the experience more than anything for the training that we are providing them. So please, our door is open. If I can have 1,000 IPPs that are partnering with us, I would be very grateful.
Gaylor, you also want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess raise the flag on this, especially this, because as I mentioned, we're busy developing the Renewable Energy Master Plan at the moment, which is led by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And we've got 4 key areas of focus. One is obviously growing renewable energy as much as possible. The more demand we can have for renewable energy, the better. One is really on industrial development, building those value chains, as I mentioned. But then we have a big area around inclusive development, and that's really about bringing new suppliers into the supply chain, new entrants, getting them supported. We know how difficult it is to become a supplier to an industry that's really already, even though it's fairly new, very well established and dominated by a lot of foreign players, big corporations. So it is a challenge, but our 4th pillar is really on skills development, and really for us, it's about building that pipeline from actually getting the right training or qualifications. So one of the things that we're looking at actually is to set up a platform between industry and education providers, so that there's actually a matchmaking kind of process. You say, well, as industry, this is the qualifications that we need. That's the kind of training that we need. Even
you can clap, it's okay. She's clapping secretly. You can clap for that.
So I do need to chat to you. And even to like some detail at times, like train people on this software rather than that software, and then building that pipeline. Once you graduate, so then you need internships. You need to activate those skills. So we're actually looking at doing a bit of a structured pathway, for actually all the people in the sector to then gain that experience, 12 months, internship, and then they can enter the market. So that's currently unfolding. We're putting that together, and hopefully that's going to support really efforts that many are already doing in the sector.
Yeah. So there are lots of conversations to put together, synergize. Yes, we've got another question from the side of the room. Depending on time, it might have to be our last one, but let's see how we go. Maybe if we keep our responses, just try a little bit of brevity. Hi.
Sure. Sorry, I was worried about time. So I just wanted to really thank the one panelist for mentioning economic development as opposed to economic growth. The challenge that we've got is the economic system was designed intentionally to be extractive, exploitive, and exclusive. And so unless, and the panelists have all agreed, unless there is a systemic change in the way we think about business in society and the role of the economy in society, I don't think we're going to achieve social justice in the South African system. And so for me, it's about creating new ecosystems of scalable economic development that are more socially responsible, financially inclusive, and ecologically sustainable. And so that's the agenda that the Nedbank CSI strategy is trying to support, is how can we create those new ecosystems in a way that is just and inclusive.
Thank you. And now as a comment, so let's quickly squeeze this last one in.
Hi, Gordon Lang from both Trialogue and Sea Sustainability. What I'm hearing is a different term to green economy, and I know this is sort of throwing a cat amongst the pigeons at the moment, but Kate Raworth proposed an economic system that was called donut economics, which is speaking to exactly what we're talking to at the moment, where there's a floor below which we should not go in terms of social equity, and there's a ceiling above which we should not go in terms of exploitation of the natural resources of the planet. I would just love to hear a comment or two from the panel on this and how one can bring it in. And it speaks very strongly to what Dr. du Plessis was saying as well.
Okay, donut economics, yeah?
Yeah, Kate, I mean, I'm a fan of Kate. I know her personally from previous relationships.
Is there anyone you don't know? Or haven't worked with or crossed paths with?
Well, I guess I'm Chairman Mao, it's in the name.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. And, we oftentimes get, our center was set up in 2012 when the key term there was the green economy, and then we transitioned into something else, circular economy, and then the donut economy coming. In my mind, and a lot of it really goes back to the framework that Monet presented, that we are bound by our planetary boundaries. Anything, humans and so on, we work within the limits of our economy. So I'm totally pro the idea of the donut economy, because I think that really there's only one planet that we have. We don't have any other planet. And so we have to work within the constraints of what we have. So I don't have much to add, but I just think that it's a great framework, actually.
Anyone else as we wrap? Is that it? All right. Well, it doesn't sound like we have proponents who are like growth all the way at any cost, no matter what, since we are in this neoliberal economy that's causing us to want a different kind of way of doing things. I want to thank my panel. Please let's a round of applause.
Thank you.
For Mao, for Gaylor, Maluta, and Kgabiso, thank you very much for participating in our panel. If you could grab that mic. Thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of thought-provoking thoughts and insights there. There we go. If you can receive your gifts, courtesy of Trialogue. There we go. Wow. A lot of thought-provoking conversations. We did promise it at the beginning. It's always different when you think it'll happen to others, and then when it happens to you, it's like, whoa. Just waiting for the room to settle a little bit. There's a couple of announcements before we break for lunch. I have a card here that's been lost. Munyanga K. Is Munyanga K in this room? Principal CC Researcher. We've got an identity card with that name on it. If you could please just reach out to the team at the back. Annika, there she is. She's got her hand up at the back. If that is your card, then please reach out to Annika at the back. Manyanga K, I think. And it says Government of Zimbabwe. So if it belongs to anyone, please make sure that you retrieve it. I also want to announce 2 winners from earlier, from our GBV session. Throughout today and tomorrow, we're just going to continue to give out prizes, right? So the first winner is Christy Evans, ED of Grooteskier Hospital Trust here. Is Christy, because you have to be in the room to win. You have to be in the room to win. What is that? Oh, she's on the virtual platform. Ah, yes, she's on the virtual platform. So she shared a great insight a little bit earlier on, and that's what we were saying about the robustness of the chat box and what's going on there. So we spotted 2 really interesting comments there. So Christy is our first winner. And then we also have Kathima Ibrahim from Mikulu Trust. And the 2 of them are our winners from the GBV conversation a little bit earlier on. So please continue to drop your insights, especially from what you've just heard now. We have winners that we'll be looking for the other prizes. Remember, there's that MPO listing, lots of prizes to give away there. So continue to share your insights. Now that we've wrapped the panel, we're going to have our pause moment. I'm going to give everybody in the room just a moment to write down your thoughts, capture whatever came to mind or whatever stood out for you during today. It's just under a minute or so for a moment for you to capture whatever it is that was triggered or that stirred or that you were curious about, a thought you'd want to explore, an idea that excited you, and you can put that down in your journal or in the chat box